Okay, let's start the session. Let's put our hands together and let's say sadhu 3 times. So, um, we have more than usual participants for the Buddhism 101 program because it happened to be a auspicious day for the Buddhist. This full moon, which is tomorrow, is celebrated around the Buddhist calendar by a lot of Buddhists because it notes the birth, enlightenment, and the passing away of Buddha. So it's also very customary that people would come to the temple on a full moon day, usually in white cloth, and then they would spend the entire day in silence. That is the objective. But I hear some people talking. We are supposed to be in silence, reflecting about our mind, listening to discussions, Dhamma, meditating. That's what happens on a full moon day usually. So it's a day of peacefulness. I often wonder, I hear that around the full moon day people go a little loony sometimes. I've seen it, in fact, if you work close with the mental health institutes, that you find that mental health can be a little negative. You have experience around that during full moon. So maybe it's a good thing that people come to the temple and try to stay calm on that day. Look at the lake and listen to the talks, do a little bit of meditation, so you find that calmness. So maybe that's the purpose. Maybe it's just the beginning of the month, so it's that way. Anyway, let's get to our Buddhism 101. So we have been doing a bit of discussion. This is the 6th day, which is supposed to be the discussion about disappointment, which was very practical because for some reason this disappointment episode got postponed quite a few times. It got postponed 2 times and Jason did not get the email. Did it never come or did it come eventually? Okay. And then Jason and Heidi and a few others had to come last week and they got disappointed. But if they were following Buddhism 101, they should learn something out of that. So someone was telling me, I think Helen, that some people are disappointed yesterday, and then I told her that that was my best session ever, best presentation ever. So session 6, is that correct, Jason? Is it 6? Okay. So today we are going to discuss about the uncertainty part of the mind. So before we go to the uncertainty part, I again want to sort of recapture what we have been discussing over the last few weeks. And a beautiful way to put that in, understand is this sutta called Nibbedika Sutta, which appears in the Pali Canon. Nibbedika means a very sharp exposition, penetrative exposition, which means it's very sharp. It goes down to the bottom of it, goes to the core of it, Nibbedika. So I will also try to display how it is in the Pali Canon. The Pali words, of course, Pali is not a language a lot of people understand. It's an old language. But then when Pali is translated to English, it becomes very difficult to read because it gives a completely different meaning. Because there's a lot of cultural nuances. For example, I got a bottle of maple syrup from the fresh maples in Waterloo region yesterday. But how can I explain this to a Sri Lankan, for example? There's no maple trees in Sri Lanka. So you can't directly translate maple syrup. I'll have to tell, well, it's like the treacle you get from the coconut tree or the palmyra tree. So there are differences, and also based on different long-lasting faith traditions, religions, the way we think, the language is very much shaped. So I find that translating from Pali to English is a very challenging thing, but some monks have tried it. So this is what we find in Nibbedika Sutta. So it says, monks, there are these 5 codes of sensuality, sights that are cognizable by the eye, desirable, attractive, pleasant, agreeable, fostering sensual desire, enticing. And sound, smells, taste, touch, those are the same. So we are talking about the 5 senses. But what does that mean? Now this language, it's a little not very easy to understand, right? Unless we know the context. So I always find Pali Canon is like a code that you need to decipher. It's not easy to read like a book and then try to understand right away. But then if you have a basic understanding, it has a pattern. So for example, it becomes very overwhelming also. I had to put these 3 dots and make it shorter, like for example sounds, smells, taste, it would repeat the same thing. So the Pali Canon becomes really big that way, trying to read it. But the idea here is that here in the Pali Canon there's a discussion about karma, sensuality. Now karma often is related to the more physical or the sexual side of it. So for example, today people here are obtaining the 8 precepts. So one of the precepts is Kame Sumichachara Veramani Sikkapadam Samadhiyami. I'm going to refrain from sexual misconduct. That's the connotation of Kame Sumichachara. But actually it's not only limited to sexual misconduct, it goes to all sorts of sensual pleasures and desires. So I'm sure that growing up in an Asian country like Sri Lanka, because there's a lot of Sri Lankans today, I was always trying to understand what is Kame Sumichachara, and until you're quite old, you don't really get the idea, because the teachers would skip that part. Hamuduro, the monk, would skip that part. He's a little shy to explain what that is. So but then again, what I wanted to mention is that karma does not necessarily mean sexual side of it, not limited to that physical side of it. Of course, it's a very important part of human or animal, any living being is there to procreate. So that's a very important part which drives, like Sigmund Freud says, a lot of things are driven by those needs. But here, there's the talk of karma and karma guna. Karma being the sensuality and karma guna being the strings or the chords of sensuality. So there are 2 very different things. Now how do we explain that? Now let's take different people have different sexual orientations. But among humans we could have different orientations and they could like each other for that. But when a human sees a animal like a goose or a cricket, you don't have the exact sexual feeling for those other beings. Maybe some people might be different, so they might have a different thing. But in general, you see an elephant, you don't have the same desire of karma. Maybe you want to own the elephant, maybe you want to have him as a pet, but not on that front, not on the sexual front. So then what is karma? So then it brings us this idea that is it something specific to species? Is it species specific? Like again, I will take food now. Instead of taking the sexual pleasures, let's take food. Now we could indulge in ice cream, in honey, whatever, but we can't eat wood. But a termite would really love wood. He would not want to have honey, but he likes wood. So based on the species, karma or karma guna can be different. But then let's try to understand within the realm of humans. Even within humans, let's say that you have a sexual orientation of a heterosexual orientation, man and woman. Still, a man wouldn't envision all the women with the same idea. There's your sister, your mother, the friends, but then there's your wife or partners. So the orientation is there, but still you won't have the same feeling. So then what is it? Is it something in our DNA? Is it in our physical nature? Or is it in our mind? We see that in the physical nature there's need for procreation. That's we can see it within plants, within animals, with humans. The need for procreation is there. But then the need for whatever the orientation that you have selected, is it the same? Or is it more in the mind? So that's something that we need to understand. A beautiful story to understand is an old book that I read, a Greek tragedy called the King Oedipus, story of King Oedipus. Have you heard of King Oedipus story? If you read psychology, you will find the Oedipus syndrome and Electra syndrome. Have you heard of that? Oedipus story. So basically what happens is it's an old Greek story by Sophocles. So one day there's this kingdom, the king and the queen, they have a child. There's a prince who's born, but then the astrologers in that kingdom, they say this prince is going to be, this little baby is going to be very destructive for the entire nation, so we need to get rid of that little baby. So they put that baby in a basket and then send him through the river, and so someone picks him up, and then that person takes that baby to the kingdom which is next door, the next kingdom. So in that kingdom, the queen and the king, they raise this child. So the little prince become young enough. He's an adult now, and now one day in his deathbed, the other king, he says that we are not your real parents. Your real parents are, we don't know who your real parents are. We just picked you up, but we are not your real parents. So this little prince is very devastated. He wants to find out what his real roots are. So he goes on to he said, I don't want to be here anymore, and I'm going away. So he leaves the town, he leaves the kingdom, and he goes all the way to the other kingdom, the next kingdom. And as he was trying to cross a bridge, there's a man who's coming from that side, and then they get into an argument. So that escalates, and they start fighting, and then there was swords drawn, and he kills that other man. So then he kills the other man, then he continues to the other kingdom, and to find that king of that kingdom was recently, he has been missing, he's no more. So then somehow he ended up being the king of that other kingdom. So now he's the king of the other kingdom. He marries the queen of the previous king, and then he's now happily living. But one day he finds this very shocking revelation that the person whom he fought and killed was his real father, and who he has married was his mum. So that's a very tragic and a very twisted story. But what we can take out of that story is that a moment ago, before he heard the story, he looked at that woman thinking that she's a partner. And then the moment he realized that it's not a normal person, it's his mum, he got so devastated, he took a pin of that mother and he blinded his eyes. So that's the tragic of King Oedipus. But then it also gives this fantastic idea, what is in our mind can completely change the reality. Do you agree? What is in our mind, what we think, how we think, can completely change the entire reality to a very tragic end, to a very ecstatic end. So, karma and karma guna are those. So, the difference is karma is this conceptual idea. So, in this last part, the yellow part, sankappa rago purisassa kamo in Pali language, which means the karma or that so-called sensuality is nothing but a conceptual idea. But we should not mix it with the karma guna. Karma guna are the strings or the chords. They are the constituents, they are the ingredients, but they are different to karma. Does that make any sense? Karma, karma guna. So it goes on to say the sounds, smells, taste, touches, they are external sense objects received through the 5 internal sense bases: eye, ear, nose, tongue, and the body. When the sense objects happen to be desirable, attractive, pleasant, agreeable, fostering sensual desire and enticing, the unenlightened being pay unwise attention to them and respond with passion, craving, resulting in mental defilements. Now, it might be a very simple truth, but if you can decode this, it's going to be very powerful. It's really powerful. Pretty much our entire lives are based around this notion. We think the sensuality, the pleasuring or the happiness creation is in the sight, it's in the sound, it's in the touch, it's in what we smell and taste. But those are only the ingredients, those are only the chords or strings of sensuality. The sensuality is a conceptual idea, sankappa rago purisassa kamo. So that's the summary of what we have been discussing over the last 3 weeks almost, that I was trying to tell you that there are 2 things: karma guna, strings or ingredients, and the karma, which is a more conceptual idea. So let's go to the disappointment part today without further disappointing you. We discussed about the range of our emotion, sad and happiness. So you can be sad, you can be happy, but then there's another dimension to it. You can be hopeful and you can be hopeless. Right? Those are two very important dimensions which will let you think whether you live or die. For example, if you're hopeful and happy, that's a very good place to be. Optimistic joy. You're hopeful, you're happy. Because hope is a very important thing in human life. Without hope, it will be very bad. And there could be sadness, but then you're still hopeful, which will keep you going. Every month, I at least hear about 5 people who complains to me that I want to commit suicide. Like literally want to self-harm, suicide or self-harm. I also hear about another 10 more people who complain that, but I know that they are not going to do that. They're just complaining. But there are at least about 5 people who really wants to do it, self-harm. And every time they do that, only thing I can do is to instill some hope in them. That's the quick fix. Right? If you give them some hope, because the moment you want to, you don't see a end of the tunnel, you don't see there's anything to hang on to, you just want to end it. Usually you don't do it when the life is happy, you do it when the life is a little in the miserable side. So if you're sad, still if you're hopeful, then there's then you can be okay. Especially when I went to India this time, I saw a really bad poor state and the biggest slum in the world called Dharavi slums. People are very poor, like extremely poor to a limit where we can't imagine, but they're still very hopeful. They're happy and they're not happy, but they're hopeful. They believe that one day the good karma is going to come to them and eventually they are going to be in a heaven or a better realm. So they're hopeful. That keeps them going. If you are in this category, you'll be in ultimate despair. So that's a bad place to be. But then can you be happy and hopeless? Is that possible? Can you be happy and hopeless? Now we know we can be hopeful and happy. We can be hopeful but sad. Sad and hopeless is a very bad place to be. But can we be happy and hopeless? In fact, there was this experiment done by one of the behavioral scientists. I'm sorry to bring those animal stories because they always take animals and put them into different experiments, sometimes very cruel. So what they did was they took a few mice and then they put them in a bucket or a tub of water to a point where they can climb up and they would drown. So now they are about to drown. They are struggling to get out, but they can't because the walls are so smooth. Now they are almost about to drown. But then the scientists, they put a little string there so the mice could climb up. So when they were about to climb up, they again put the little poor mice to the water back again. Very cruel experiment. Now the mice are about to drown again. But what they have noticed is that first time the mice were about to give up within, I'm just coming with an arbitrary number. In the first run, the mice were about to give up within 5 minutes. They were struggling, but they couldn't, and they were about to give up and succumb to that death after about 5 minutes. But after they knew that there's going to be a string and then someone is going to pull up, they were struggling for about 10 minutes. Right? It's a very cruel experiment, I'm sorry about that. But we get the idea. You can be hopeful and then hang on to life bearing all that sadness and unhappiness. So it's a very important aspect of life. We can be happy and sad, sukha, dukkha, but then hopeful and hopelessness, the expectation, the destruction of that expectation, the disappointment, and that expectation, they are also very two important aspects of our life. So let's try to get into the bottom of it. Now again, if we look at happiness, I put an image of a whirlpool because now there's happiness. And as we become happy, we also have an expectation to repeat that happiness. Is that right? We eat a new fruit, we go to a new place, we meet a new person, the 4 P's basically, the people, places, whatever you do with your eyes, ears, If you do something and if you happen to like that, if you were happy with that, you are going to have that expectation to have it again, right? Has it ever occurred in your life that you had something for the first time, it was very tasty, you asked for the recipe, wanting to recreate that, you made it, but it wasn't that great. It was great in the first place, but it wasn't so great the next time. You went to a place, it was so beautiful, you thought, I'm going to come back here again. Second time you went, it wasn't that great. It was okay, but not as good as the first time. But then the important aspect is that there's happiness. With happiness, we also have, if we enjoy it, we also have the need to recreate that moment. So expectation to repeat that moment. Now this expectation to repeat can be very troubling as well, because there's suspense. You can't get it right away. You don't have the money, you don't have the time, or you don't have the energy. So it can be bad in itself also, this expectation to wanting to repeat. And then the next part is that sometimes, rather than just having that place or a person, that journey becomes enjoyable. In fact, the achievement becomes not so nice. Achievement is okay, but the journey becomes more enjoyable. Or that journey can be very arduous, it can be very bad. So I'm just pointing out, not trying to come up with a theory. But then as you have an expectation and as you follow your expectation and journey to repeat that, you would either meet it or not meet it, right? So when the expectations are met, we are happy. When they are not met, we are unhappy. Very simple, right? We expect something and we get it, we are happy. If we don't get it, we are unhappy. But then it goes further. If it's met, we might have even a stronger desire to repeat it again, keep repeating it again. So that might be one. Or we might get bored of that and we might move on. Remember, we discussed the nature of mind, so anything is possible. But regardless of whatever, it doesn't seem like a perfect way to do things. There's always a little catch. There's a little, when you, especially when you take insurance agreements, you never read the full insurance indemnity form. There's a lot of clauses and the fine print. People don't. It's very hard to read the fine print unless you're trained like a lawyer, and we usually just sign it. But then when you're trying to claim something, they would say, no, you agreed. So the universe is also the same. We don't read the fine print of the universe. So this exercise on a full moon day at a meditation retreat, we are trying to read the fine print of our own manual, of our own make. So the universe has this fine print that sometimes they happen, sometimes they don't. But now happens the disappointment. Somewhere in here happens the disappointment. Now let's try to understand what disappointment is. What are the main causes of motor traffic accidents? I'm looking at Jason slightly because he would know more answers. What are the main causes for motor traffic accidents? Distraction. What else? Texting, drinking, under influence, texting. What else? Speeding. Yeah? Okay. There's motor traffic accidents, we know that. What is the main cause for divorce in Canada? Money? Money. Yeah? Ego. Incompatibility. Well, let's look at it from a different point of view. What if I say the biggest cause of divorce in Canada is getting married? The biggest cause of motor traffic accident is because we have motor cars. Right? Is that right? It might look like a joke, but is that right? Can you ever be divorced from a person that you're not married to? Right? So again, I'm sorry if I'm disappointing you again with the disappointment session. The main cause for disappointment is expectation. That's it. Period. Let's go home. The main cause for disappointment is expecting. Simple as that. But then, although we know that it's hard for us to right away get into that, but let's see what we can do about it. Main cause usually for disappointment is we have expectations. But sometimes this expectation can be very unrealistic. Of course, in life we need to have expectation or a little bit of slight amount of hope, unless you are trained to think in a different way, or unless you have understood or understand, you have seen the nature of the mind. The normal human existence would always want to be a little hopeful. That's very natural. So let's find a better way to do this. Usually when people marry, they would always say, in sickness, happiness, until the death do us part, right? Which is a very unrealistic statement. They are going to part, they might stay, they could easily part ways also. In fact, even in Sri Lanka, when we were young, according to Hindus, they believe that every partner's name is carved, tattooed on the other one's forehead. So you need to go and meet that other partner whose forehead has a tattoo, the name, the other person's name. And they believe that life is for eternity. So you're in this seeking until you find this correct partner. The moment you find this correct partner, you will stay for life, for eternity. There's not even death which should do us part. You would go on forever. But then you can't apply strictly it in Buddhist context, because Buddhism has this concept called anatma, or non-soulness. So if you don't have a soul, or if the idea of the soul is debated or challenged, then how can you have a partner for the entirety of your soul? So that's a bit of a paradox there, but that's okay. We need to also have practical expectations, otherwise this life is not going to be very practical. So we need to figure out a way how to do that now. So one day there's this beautiful story. It's appearing in Theravada canon also, but it's mostly a Zen story that I have heard. One day a Buddhist monk and a student, a teacher and a student, they were talking to each other, and the student wanted to ask about disappointment. So then the master said, okay, I will teach you disappointment. You will see the alms bowls today. We will be served food in alms bowls today, I think. The monks will be served. So fill water into that alms bowl, and then try to take it to the other side of the monastery without spilling the water. So the master ordered that for the student, and then now the student has water up to the brim of the bowl, and then he's walking in a meditative manner, slowly, silently, mindfully. He's walking now, and all of a sudden this master comes and he just pushes him, and the student gets so upset, disappointment, even angry. And then the master asks, why are you angry? He said, well, you asked me to give this task, but you are disturbing my meditation. That's not cool, right? That's not nice. And the master says, so why did you expect me to not do anything? Right? When the rain comes down, do you curse the clouds? When the sun shines too harshly, do you curse the sun? When the wind is blowing too fiercely, do you blame the wind? Or do you accept it as part of the nature? And if that is nature, why did you not accept that I also have that nature? And then he took a little leaf and showed, see, this leaf was during spring, it was in life, and now it's fall, it's yellow, it's red, it's withered away, and you can't stop it. The same way, people also have seasons. There are good seasons, there are nice seasons, there are bad seasons. And if you don't expect the winter, summer, spring, autumn to stop, why are you expecting people to stop and be nice all the time? Very simple teaching. Again, it's very disappointing, but this truth is very simple, right? We can't stop the season of people also. People also have good seasons, bad seasons. They are going to be very positive to you. They are going to be very negative to you. Some seasons might stay longer, some seasons might stay shorter. But regardless, there's going to be seasons. So the moment you accept that reality, your disappointment will be lesser. So one thing is that we don't have an expectation. Technically, if you have zero expectation, zero divorce rate. No marriage, no divorces, right? No expectation, no disappointment. But if we can't do that, but at least if we can understand this nature, that there are seasons, so that's a good way to at least think about it, reflect and move on, right? But then what else can we see? we also see that when we make expectations, some expectations are attainable. Some expectations are not attainable. For example, we never wish for the winter to stay or winter to finish in 2 days. We know that's something that won't happen. So we have accepted that. What I'm trying to say is that we have accepted certain things of the nature, but we are not accepting the entirety of the nature. Right? We are accepting a few, but we are rejecting a lot. And that is what causes all the suffering, misery, and whatever the mental thing that you are going through. We don't expect the winter to be over in 2 days. We don't expect the summer to last for the entire year. We know that regardless of our wishful thinking, it's going to change. But with people, with places, with our expectations, we sometimes make unrealistic expectations. But then there's another way to look at it. What if we think of it this way? When we make expectations, we also have a sense of controllability around it. Controllability. I'll give you an example. Does anyone here expect the Milky Way galaxy to spin the way you like? No. You do? Very good. The little kid does. The adults won't do that. Does anyone expect the world to be exactly the way you want? Maybe not. Does anyone expect USA to be the way you want? You're very resentful of what's happening probably, but you don't expect. Not these days especially. Do you expect Canada to be the way you want? Well, we live here, we have a right, we have a need, so we might want Canada to be more in line with our wishes. Do you want, yes, Colleen?
So what is the difference between expectation and hope then?
Right.
Because I don't expect things, but I hope
for things. Very good, very good. So this is exactly the point we are trying to figure out. Let's find the range of this. What is, we are hopeful of certain things, and we also, expectation is like the bigger umbrella term. We can expect the very impossible things, but the hope is usually a practical portion. We don't make the hope very impractical. I mean, what I'm trying to say is that although we make expectations, hopes, when we make hopes, we know to keep it in a more controllable manner. We don't hope the weather to be all flat or the weather to be the way I want. Our hopes are more curated. Our minds are actually very cunning. They don't expect everything. They don't hope for everything. They only hope for certain things that might be possible. So if we again look at the controllability of that, we want Canada to be controlled the way I want, but I want Ontario to be more in my wishes. Forget Alberta, forget Saskatchewan, forget Quebec. We want Ontario to be as per our wishes. And then we want the city of Cambridge or Waterloo or wherever you live to be more under our expectation. Forget about the Cambridge city. We want the Ward 2 of North Dumfries, which is here. We want that to be under our control, our township, our community. Or we want our Browns community or the Rossville Road to be under our control. Forget the Rossville Road. I want my property to be under my control. Forget the property because I might be sharing it with the other people. I want my room or my bed to be in control the way I want. So more closer now, it can expand and it can come. If you are the president, it might expand. And if you are taking important decisions, if you are somehow responsible, it might expand. But it can contract, it can come to my clothes, my possessions, my phone, things that I directly control. So more control you seem to have, your expectations will also be higher. You can accept America not working the way you want, but you'll be very unhappy when the Canada is not working the way you want. And you'll be more unhappy when the city of Cambridge is not working the way you want. You'll be really unhappy if your household is not working the way you want. Right? So when we become hopeful, we have hopeful based on this controllability factor. But then the next question we need to ask, how much of control a person truly has? How much of control would or possibly a person could truly have? Can we control the weather? To a certain degree. In Dubai, they make artificial rain seeding. To a small extent, maybe Elon Musk is planning to go to Mars and make it more habitable by putting nuclear bombs and making more CO2 and then making it more warmer. Maybe to a certain extent, but not to the full extent. No one can still have the capability, human capability, to do it to a full extent. So we won't be hopeful about that. We can hope, please don't rain, but we know whether we whether we wish for it or not, something is going to happen. So we have acceptance over that. Do we have control over what people think or do or behave? No, right? After living for this long, you know that we don't have control over other people, including our children, our parents, partners. We don't have a lot of control. Do we have control over our body? If you want to lift your hand, you can. If you want to close your eyes, you can. If you want to control your breath, you can. So we have more control over our body, right? Nihal does a lot of yoga, so he does pranayama. Can you hold your breath for 20 minutes? No one can. Maybe few people can, but generally the body also has limitations. So we don't have the ultimate control over our body. I met a very nice gentleman over there in the next, our neighbor. He's 92. He would walk 15 to 20,000 steps every day, even at that age. But now he can't because his knee joint has gone bad and he's on a walker now. So the body doesn't work the way you want all the time. It might happen in a older age. It might happen at a very young age, but it could anytime happen. So we can't control the weather, the external things. We can't control the glass material, the deterioration, the UV. We can't control that. We can't control people. We can't control our bodies 100% also. Can we control our mind 100%? Is there a possibility? Unlikely, right? So if we can't control anything, why are we making these expectations and getting upset? Isn't it really simple? We are doing it wrong. This is called the ignorance, or avidya. We are doing something wrong and then we are expecting it to be right. So I don't think I taught you anything new today. You already knew this nature, but you were not willing to accept this nature. That's a different story. But this nature, this Dhamma, is as natural as it can get. That's why it's called the nature, Dhamma. It's not something created or unnatural. We know this is a reality. But having said that, it's also fine balance. We don't have full control, but we have a partial control. So this partial control sometimes gives us the false sense of 100% control. So we try to, because we have a partial control, we extrapolate it and say, maybe we might have full control, and we become hopeful of that, gaining that full controllability. So now this is a very important nature. The only way to find this is to become mindful about it. Every time you make an expectation, every time you do a task, every time you are hopeful, every time you are happy and sad, let's try to be mindful. What am I doing? Now, being mindful is not trying to discern and judge your mind. I'm good, I'm bad, I'm holy, I'm spiritual. That's not what we are trying to do. We are trying to understand. We are just field workers. They don't analyze the data. They collect the data. So mindfulness is being that field worker. You are collecting the data. You are not analyzing the data. Let the data analysis be on a later date. Right now, we are only collecting the data. This partial control is also, I go in Uber vehicles sometimes. It's also like an Uber car sometimes. When you book an Uber on your app, you have control. You are booking the vehicle. But although you book the vehicle, they can cancel anytime. Has it happened to you? It happens to me all the time in this area because I think it's far away from Cambridge. They cancel sometimes. For some reason, they cancel. So we have some control, but we don't have full control. And even when you're on the road, we are on the road, app has started, but the road might be closed, right? Or the car might give us some trouble and we might have to get out of the car. We might go meet an accident, so our journey could be altered, right? The driver also has the right to say, I don't like you, get out of my vehicle, anytime, right? So although we have a ownership, we have a controllability, it's never 100% controllability. So what we can do while we are riding the Uber car, we can ride that car knowing that it's not my 100% controllable car. But there's a particular way that we can do it. We can treat the car nicely. We don't want to litter the car. We can be compassionate. We can be kind. We can share that journey in a more positive manner rather than being very grumpy, hopeless, or sad. Right? So that's something that we can do. So again, expectations, we do make expectations and it's almost impossible to not have expectations. But then there's a way that we can look at expectations based on the controllability factor. We are making expectations, but truly, how controllable are they? Are they really controllable? Or are we having a false sense of controllability? So that's a very important way to look at it. So this nature again is extremely simple. The only thing you need to do is to pay a little more attention to that. So one day there's another Zen story. One day there was a flagpole and the monks were seated around, under that and they were meditating. So then there's a wind and the flag started waving and the flag was flapping. So the most novice monk, he said, the flag is flapping. Right? He said the flag is flapping, so we can't do meditation. Let's get out of this. The more experienced monk said the wind is flapping. Not the flag, the wind is flapping. He's a little more experienced. And then there was a third monk who has meditated for about 20 years. He said the mind is flapping. Right? He said it's not the flag, it's not the wind, the mind is flapping. And then there was this one very enlightened old monk. He said the mouths are flapping. Right? So it's again different perspective. Depending on how you look at it, you can either be disappointed, very frustrated, or you can understand the nature of things. Right? Now the next part, the next way to understand or make expectations is to understand this other nature. When we are trying to make an expectation, of course, if there's a gap between the reality and expectation, there's disappointment. But in order to make an expectation, how much of knowledge do we have to make an expectation? Now, that's a very important way to look at it. I will talk about the word anicca. One of the main things with our human experience is that the knowledge that we can perceive of the universe is always limited. Is that right? We can only look at the world from ultraviolet to infrared. The visible light range is in between those two, infrared to ultraviolet. We can't see what is beyond. So we perceive the world with that limited light range. We can hear only between 20 to 20,000 hertz. 1 hertz we can't hear, the dogs could, or the elephants could. 40,000 hertz we can't hear. So we can only listen to things between 20 to 20,000 hertz. There's only a certain amount of smells, aromas that you can perceive. Can you smell oxygen right now? You can't. It's again a chemical process. Our receptors can only perceive a limited amount of chemical aromas. We only can taste certain things. Do you know the taste of the water? Is there a taste of the water? There are a lot of tastes which are inert. After you eat something, you eat sorbet ice cream, to inert, sort of neutralize your palate. So we can't taste everything. It's again also very limited. Can we touch everything? Can we touch the air and feel it? Or can we touch the vacuum and feel it? There's a lot of things that we can't touch. There's a fine material called aerogel, which is used in space industry. It's very light. You won't even feel it if it's on your hand. So there are a lot of things that we can't touch. We can't touch, let's say that there are, especially in Reiki and energy and all that realm, there's a lot of things they say that which are never tangible. not tangible, could exist. So our information about the world is always very limited. It's extremely limited. So based on this limited information and based on our limited capacity of thinking, we make expectations. So they are absolutely bound to go wrong. There's no magic about it. They are bound to go wrong. Let's say that Ann, when you came today, this morning, did you know that there's going to be a lot of people today? You did, sort of, right? Let's say that someone came here not knowing that, you didn't know, right? Not knowing that there's going to be more people, then you are surprised, right? In a positive manner or a negative manner. Both, there could be good surprise and bad surprise. In fact, the most happiness you can have is a good surprise. Surprise birthday parties, surprise whatever treats. If you're surprised, it could be very good, or it could be very difficult, very depressing. You're surprised in a bad way. But if you don't have the knowledge, and if you expected this to be the normal place, then that's a wrong expectation, because we made an expectation based on limited information. Right? So the same way, regardless of what expectation we make, we have to take information from our five senses and then process it with our mind. That always has a limitation, and because of that, the world is bound to have a lot of disappointments. It's absolutely normal to be disappointed because our expectations are fundamentally wrong. Right? So that's always the case. So this word anicca, I'm going to talk about the word anicca in the 3 marks of existence, but it's very interesting that there's a nuanced idea of anicca. Usually it's impermanence. There's a sense tool also, Neela also with the same symbol. It usually means impermanence, anicca, but it also has a very profound meaning of uncertainty. Uncertainty. Or not being able to understand, or not being able to know. Now let's say there are 2 things which could happen. The world is fated. It's deterministic. You know what determinism is, right? Everything is pre-ordered, pre-designed. It can be either predetermined or it can be spontaneous. It could be either 2. But regardless of whatever, no one can ever have the knowledge about that, what's going to happen. Regardless of it's predetermined or spontaneous, we would not have the knowledge about it. One could say this is what the astrologers do. They take whatever the chart you have, look at your body and whatever, and they determine what is going to happen. But no matter what prediction you do, no prediction is 100% accurate. In fact, in mathematics, it's called a probability density function. Probability density function, PDF. PDF, not as Adobe PDF, but PDF determines how probabilistically possible it is. There's absolutely no way any scientist, any data model can come up with a 100% possibility, because it's always bound by certain parameters that we cannot capture. You probably know it better with what you do. There's always change, there's always uncertainty. Uncertainty could be based on the world being spontaneous and uncertain. Even if the world is determined, there's still uncertainty because we won't have the knowledge. We won't have the complete knowledge about it. Do you have a question? Samani, are you thinking about something? What are you thinking about? I saw your face.
No, like I never even thought of that, but the world could be determined or spontaneous.
I knew that you were thinking about something very seriously.
It's too much to think.
don't think too much. So the question was.
Live in the moment.
But there's one thing you could do. If you understand this nature, there's a beautiful parable which is given. Let's take this lake, the Barry's lake. There could be ripples on the surface, but at the bottom, it's very still. It's a beautiful parable. In a pond, there could be ripples of this uncertainty, of this despair, whatever. The emotions could be ripples. But at the bottom, you are very still. Even in the ocean, the waves are like this, but you go a few feet under, you don't get that effect of the waves. So I used to surf a lot, and when they have to cross the wave, they would do this thing called duck diving. They take the boat and go under the wave. So under the wave is very calm. Just 2 feet, 3 feet under the wave, it's very calm. While on top there's a big calamity, there's a big commotion, drama up there, but underneath is very calm. So if we understand this nature of the world, the ripples could be in the surface of your mind, but at the core, we could be very calm. Why? Because our expectations are always limited by the knowledge. And if you think a little bit about it, we do not have the 100% controllability of whatever is around us. So then, when we make the expectations, please be prepared to let go of them also. Make expectations, but don't get attached to those expectations. Another way to look at this is, I used to go to Philippines a lot also. One reason being surfing, but the other reason because I had a business going on there. There's this beach where every year they do a sandcastle festival in Boracay Beach. Beautiful, like very big festival, beautiful sandcastles. But the funny thing is, every year you join that festival, the previous year's sandcastles are gone. But then the nice thing is everyone is so invested. They are very energetic. They are trying to make the best sandcastle. But every time they carve that sandcastle, they know that this is also going to go by the next year. It's not going to stay. So we can make expectations like that. So I know that pop culture would even hate the monk or disagree with the monk. Instead of saying until the death do us part, we might say we might not stay and let's get married. That's a good way to get married. But it's again, people don't like to accept the reality. They like to live in a state of dream. But if you can accept the reality that we could be here, we could not be here, that is the reality, the life will become more convenient. It will become less stressful. We don't have to think about determinism or whatever. It will be less stressful. But there's another important way that we can walk on this life. Rather than having expectations, rather than having goals, we can just enjoy the process. We can enjoy the process. One day another Zen monk was walking with another student. The student asked, Master, it's a long way, it's few more days, are we going there at the correct pace? Do we have enough food? Do you think we can go there? So he was very worried about what might happen. And then the master said, well, you're so fixated about your end goal. I'm not going there for the end goal. I'm going there on the journey. Let's enjoy the journey. So that's why every time when people come for meditation, I ask them to write down, why are you here for? And I'm sure that although some are trying to be very introspective, we naturally have the need or the urge to come up with an expectation. But I love the kids. They come for the summer camp. They purely come for pizza. That's it. Which is very good. So they are like, I take the example of kids a lot because we were doing it right at one point of our life. They just enjoy the process. They don't have expectations. I want to get good grades. I want to have these achievements under my belt. But more you grow, you make very unrealistic expectations. And then you say there's disappointment, right? So that's something that we can think about. And also, I happen to follow this artist. No one knows who he is. Have you seen this photo? His name is Bansky. Yeah. He never resurfaced. He or she, that person never resurfaced. Very nice, very interesting drawing. So this particular drawing, the girl with the balloon, it was auctioned for a huge amount. I don't know the exact figure, let's say $1 million. It was auctioned. And so he was probably at the auction center. So it was getting auctioned, 1 million, final call. And then right after it was 1 million, he pressed a button and then it got shredded to pieces. And then after that shredding, those shreddings were then sold for 10 million pounds. That's because he's Bansky. But then what he does is, all this money, it goes for charity. It goes for a good cause. So then what I wanted to finally say is that we can make expectations, It is natural that we make wishes, hopes, expectations, but we also need to understand they could always go the way that we do not want to be. It's completely natural, and there's no 100% guarantee that we can protect your expectations, or anyone could protect your expectation. Be it Buddha, be it Dhamma, it's not possible. It's the nature of things. It's bound to be uncertain. And then when you make these expectations, even if you have to, we can make it with the notion that we might one day have to let it go. When Buddha teaches his Dhamma, he says, one day this Dhamma or my doctrine is also something that you need to let go. You don't want to even hang on to this doctrine. He takes an example of a boat. You take the boat to cross the river, but once you cross the river, don't take the boat, leave it there. Right? So it's very simple. So it's very natural, because you can get attached to, you can detach everything, but you can get attached to what you believe, your doctrine. So even the doctrine, let's let go. We'll make expectations, but we'll do it with the notion that they are going to go away eventually. But as we do, let's try to enjoy the process. Let's try to be compassionate during this process. So that's a very good way of making expectations, right? So can we upgrade our expectation making process and not get disappointed? Because if this is 0 and if this is 100, if our target of achievement is at 100, you might go there, you might not go there. But if our target of achievement is just one day, right? At least even if you don't achieve something here, you will have 100 beautiful days. So that way, the life can be better and more. In fact, if you can make it more 100 compassionate days, you have had a beautiful life. There's nothing to complain. There's absolutely no disappointment. So that's the idea that I wanted to share with you. Disappointment. Next week we do not have, so don't get disappointed by coming here. We have the meditation retreat next week, and anger and fear will be on the 25th of May.
Yeah, you said the mind is not in your control, but I was thinking maybe it won't be easy, but you can control your mind. So what did you sort of mean that?
Yeah, so mind is controllable partially. No one has the full control of mind. When I say no one, that's a dangerous, it's a very heavy statement. What about Buddha? Can Buddha control mind 100%? Even Buddha is bound by that Dhamma. Buddha is bound by the nature. For example, this is a misconception in a lot of Buddhist practices, that people come here to keep the mind in one place, or concentrate the mind. They like the idea of, we were discussing it, the last time I think. Concentration of mind is a very hot topic. People come to meditate and concentrate their mind, keep their mind in one thing. But that's one of the most impractical things to do. You keep your mind here, you will not hear the call for lunch, you will be hungry. By about 6 o'clock you are going to be thinking about food. So even a monk or a ascetic who would try that, he would be okay for one day, he would be okay for few days, maybe let's say 7 days. After 7 days you have to get up and go for your food. So mind can never be concentrated 100%. The nature of the mind is to flow, like water. Water and mind are very similar, they flow. You can contain it for a period of time, like when you build a reservoir, like a dam. It will stay for a momentary period of time. The nature of the water is to flow. So the mind is also bound by that nature. It's flowing. So that's why Buddha says that the very nature of mind is this flow, which is also another meaning for anicca. Anicca also means the flow, impermanent flowability. Yeah. So controllability of mind. Even Buddha never said, I have full control of my mind. What he said was, I have understood my mind. Those are two different things.
When you talked about expectation as being, it's part of our nature, I also was put in mind of the fact that we're in a culture and an era that is all about unrealistic expectations, even more than just our nature.
Right.
Advertising, social media.
Correct. No, that's very good. Yeah. So again, with all due respect to everyone who does marketing, I was in that field, and I had to give up my business because I felt bad. Not because it's an unethical business. It was perfectly normal, perfectly valid and all that. But I felt that I'm creating expectations on people, and they are very wrong. So I had a disagreement with that. So that's why I had to step down and become a monk. But again, that's the world. I'm not saying that it's wrong or anything. It's just I couldn't bear to do that. Because I know whatever the expectation I'm making is a wrong expectation. But that is marketing. It's all about that. And politicians, maybe.
And people posting these days, it's self-marketing, and everybody, everybody looking what everyone else is doing and all that.
Right. Yeah. So the human nature is that we also love this group behavior. We like making expectation based on other people's behavior. So we sometimes get into really troubled expectations. I mean, if you look at the trends on social media, someone is creating, someone is following. It's in our nature to do that. But then you are right, this period of time is a time that where we make really unrealistic things. Back in the day, people had more realistic expectations. Now it's getting a little unrealistic. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Yes?
What I was thinking is actually, if you think about it, the entire life is based on expectations actually.
Right.
Honestly, right?
Yeah.
So that means that you are called Buddhism as swimming upstream. Is that like you swim upstream, like Guru Ganga?
Right.
That could be, right?
Yeah, no, you're right.
Came to our mind.
Correct, you're right. You're absolutely right. That's why in the Nibbedika Sutta it says the ignorant person, ayoniso manasikaro, and yoniso manasikaro. These are two Pali words. Again, yoni means the birthplace of your thought, the birth of your thought, or the beginning of your thought. Someone who does not understand the birth or the beginning or the fabrication of your thought will be in this delusional idea. The life is based on expectations. But the very nature of the reality is that it's uncertain, it's impermanent, it's cannot be controlled. That's the very reality of the nature. But I think we get into this false sense of security and false sense of controllability. So we extrapolate it thinking we can control everything. That's what happens. But see, Dhamma is extremely simple. It's not in all those jargon and all those heavy philosophical dogma that we are going to discuss. It's very simple. It's just looking at the nature of things. If you look at the lake over 1 year, we are going to understand impermanence. Right? It's the nature of it, and it's very unpredictable.
How do you kind of make sure that not having an expectation doesn't become an expectation?
Very good point. No, that's very good. That's a good point, because often with spiritual practices, Jason gave a nice word for that, spiritual hangover. Tell me a word for that. With spiritual practices, that's what happened. People are trying to be unattached. That's what they are doing. So the best thing to do is, that's why I also specifically mentioned Buddhism is not trying to, or mindfulness is not trying to have benchmarks and put yourself into those categories and boxes. We are just doing the field work. We are not analyzing, we are not concluding. We are trying to look at the nature without concluding it. So automatically it can be a practice that our practice becomes not expecting, right? Which has certain therapeutic use of that. But then it also has its downside, right? Because the moment you have to make expectations, you will be very unhappy. Right? So let's keep a balanced, a sensible way of looking at it. Let's try to, instead of trying to do a particular thing, let's try to observe and understand without trying to do. That's why the Buddhist path of Eightfold Path is not a path of doing. At least in the beginning there might be a little bit of doing, but it's not a path of doing, because doing is always conditional. Doing is not flexible. If you do something, and if the world is the other way, then there's a clash always. Right? So, good point. This happens when you are more serious with spirituality. If you are not very serious, it's okay. But then it can become a practice itself, and it can become a burden. So that's why even the Dhamma has to be left at one point.